You think you know the deadliest predator in the ocean. You've seen the documentaries, you've heard the stats, and you've probably already picked your winner. But here's the thing. In a Megalodon versus Great White versus Orca showdown, one of these three wins almost every time, and it is not the one with the biggest teeth. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which predator dominates, why the science points somewhere most people never expect, and what actually happens when monster meets monster in open water. Stick around, because the X factor I'm going to reveal in the middle of this video is the same thing that separates a good predator from an unchallengeable one, and it has nothing to do with size. Let's start with the elephant in the room, or more accurately, the bus-sized shark in the room, Megalodon. The name alone stops people cold, and for good reason. Current fossil evidence, primarily teeth and vertebrae, since cartilage rarely preserves, puts Otodus megalodon at somewhere between 15 and 20 meters in length. That's 50 to 65 feet. Conservative estimates from peer-reviewed scaling studies, published in journals like Scientific Reports, place the weight anywhere from 50 to 100 metric tons. Compare that to a megalodon size comparison against the great white. Your modern great white tops out around 6 meters, maybe 6.4 in exceptional individuals, and weighs roughly 2,000 kilograms. Megalodon wasn't just bigger, it was operating in a completely different size class. Its teeth measured up to 18 centimeters, nearly 7 inches, and bite force estimates derived from body mass scaling models suggest somewhere between 108,500 and 182,000 newtons. That's anywhere from 3 to 5 times the bite force of a saltwater crocodile, the current living record holder. But here's the first thing most people get wrong in any Megalodon versus Great White conversation. Raw size doesn't make you the apex predator. It makes you a big target. And that's where the tail of the tape gets genuinely interesting. The great white shark, Carcharodon carcharias, is not a consolation prize. It's one of the most perfectly engineered hunting machines evolution has ever produced. Adults average 4 to 5 meters, bite force around 18,000 newtons, and they can hit burst speeds of roughly 40 kilometers per hour in a chase. Their ampullae of Lorenzini, those electroreceptor organs packed into their snouts, can detect electrical fields as weak as 5 billionths of a volt. They hunt using a breach and bite strategy, coming up from below at speed, delivering a catastrophic initial bite, then pulling back to wait. Economical, lethal, refined over millions of years of trial and error. And great whites have something Megalodon almost certainly didn't have in the same way. They operate in cold, oxygen-rich coastal and open ocean environments across the entire globe. They're generalists. That flexibility is an underrated weapon. Now, the orca. This is where the deadliest predator in the ocean conversation gets complicated. And this is the open loop I want you to hold in your head, because I'm coming back to it. Orcinus orca, the killer whale, isn't a whale at all. It's the largest member of the dolphin family, and it is arguably the most cognitively complex predator in the ocean. Adults reach 6 to 8 meters and weigh up to 6,000 kilograms. Their bite force is estimated at around 19,000 to 27,000 newtons. Their top speed in short bursts, roughly 56 kilometers per hour. That already makes them faster than a great white. But the numbers aren't even the point. The point is that orcas hunt in coordinated pods of 5 to 30 individuals. They develop regional dialects that are culturally transmitted between generations. And here is a fact that should make every apex predator in the ocean nervous. They have documented behavior of flipping great white sharks upside down, inducing tonic immobility and eating only the liver. Not the whole shark, just the liver, because it's the highest calorie organ. That's not instinct, that's strategy. We've documented this behavior off the coast of South Africa and more recently off the Faroe Islands. This is real, verifiable, peer-reviewed behavior from researchers tracking individual orcapods. In a straight great white shark versus orca encounter, the data is unambiguous. Great whites flee the area when orcas show up. Not sometimes, consistently. Tagged sharks have been tracked abandoning prime feeding grounds for months after a single orca interaction. Now let's run the what if. What if Megalodon never went extinct? What if all three of these predators shared the modern ocean and they crossed paths? Right now, in 2026, in open water. Here's how I think this plays out. The Megalodon versus great white matchup is actually the least interesting of the three. A 50 to 100 ton ambush predator with a bite force that could shear through the spine of a prehistoric whale simply ends a 2,000 kilogram great white in a single pass. There's no contest. The great white's speed advantage, and it does have one in terms of maneuverability at smaller scale, doesn't matter when the predator closing on it is big enough that the size differential renders agility largely moot. Megalodon fed on large baleen whales. A great white registers as a snack, not a threat. The Megalodon versus Orca scenario is the one that actually keeps me up at night. And here's why. A lone orca doesn't win. A lone orca is 6,000 kilograms against something that's potentially 100 metric tons. The math doesn't work in the orca's favor in any individual encounter. But orcas don't travel alone. They never have. And here's where what sounds like a size advantage for Megalodon starts to look much more complicated. Orca pods demonstrate coordinated attack strategies against targets larger than themselves. We've documented orca pods taking down adult blue whales, the largest animals ever known to exist on Earth, through exhaustion tactics, covering blowholes, coordinating flanking passes to induce hemorrhage. A blue whale can reach 30 meters and 180 metric tons. That's potentially twice the size of even a maximum estimate Megalodon. And orcas have taken them down. Not easily, not always, but they've done it. So what actually happens when a pod of orcas encounters a living Megalodon? Here's my simulated encounter. Megalodon is running on instinct and raw power. It's a shark, an extraordinarily large one, but still operating on the sensory and neurological toolkit of a shark. Its brain-to-body ratio is orders of magnitude lower than an orca's. It detects prey by scent, by electrical field, by lateral line pressure waves. An orca pod approaching doesn't immediately register as a threat. It might register as noise, as confusion. The orcas don't attack head-on. They never do with large prey. The pod fans out, flanking wide, one or two individuals making faint passes to draw the Megalodon's attention, while others close from its blind angles. They target the pectoral fins and the tail, the locomotion points, not the body mass. A Megalodon that can't generate forward thrust can't feed, can't breathe effectively through ram ventilation, and can't fight. It's not a quick kill, but it's a systematic one. Now here's the part that changes everything, and this is the payoff I promised you at the start. One of these three wins almost every time. It's not the Megalodon, despite its incomprehensible size advantage in a one-on-one. It's not the great white, which is a phenomenal predator in its own ecological lane. The winner of this monster versus monster scenario is the orca, not because of raw power, but because of something no other predator in this matchup possesses at anything close to the same level. Culture, cooperative intelligence, the ability to transmit learned strategies across generations. Orca pods that figured out how to take down great whites didn't just use that skill once. They passed it to their offspring. Those offspring refined it. The behavior spread culturally through populations. The great white has been refined by tens of millions of years of evolution to be a solo ambush predator. The orca took a shortcut. It evolved intelligence and then used that intelligence to update its tactics in real time without waiting for genetic selection to catch up. That's an entirely different class of weapon. In the ocean right now in 2026, we don't need a what if for the great white shark versus orca outcome. We have the data. The great white loses. Consistently. Categorically. Against a Megalodon, the orca pod's outcome is less certain. There would be casualties among pod members in any realistic encounter with something that large and powerful. But across multiple encounters, across generations of pod memory, the orca figures it out. Evolution built the Megalodon to be unstoppable. Intelligence built the orca to be adaptable. And in the long run, adaptable wins. That's the real lesson here. When people ask what the deadliest predator in the ocean is, they're almost always looking at teeth, size, bite force. Those are the flashy numbers. But the actual answer is the predator that can change its strategy, learn from failure, and coordinate with others to solve a problem that no individual alone could crack. In 2026, that predator is the orca. In a world where Megalodon survived, I think the orcapods that figured it out would eventually win that arms race too. But I want to hear what you think in the comments. Is there a scenario where the Megalodon holds the top spot? What would have to be true for it to consistently beat a coordinated orcapod? Drop your argument below, because I genuinely think this one is worth debating. If this video landed for you, a like helps YouTube show it to other people who'd want to see this kind of science-grounded breakdown. And there are a couple more monster versus monster matchups on the channel that go just as deep. Worth checking out. Here's the last thing I'll leave you with. Megalodon dominated the oceans for roughly 20 million years before going extinct. The orca has been around for roughly 11 million years and is still here, still expanding its cultural toolkit, still figuring out new ways to be the last predator standing. The ocean has run this experiment before. It chose adaptability. It chose intelligence. Every time.